You know, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it echoes. And this is a story of two moments in time, separated by a full half-century, but linked by one single vital commodity that powers our entire world. It's a story of crisis, of consequence, and it leads to a really difficult question. Have we learned anything at all?
When the historian Daniel Yergin said the 1973 embargo shook the market, well, that's got to be one of the biggest understatements ever. This event didn't just rattle the economy. It completely reset geopolitics. It reordered global power, and it basically created the modern energy era we live in. It was the moment oil went from being just a commodity to a powerful political weapon, and the whole world was forced to stare its own fragility right in the face.
Okay, now, let's fast forward to March 2026. The headlines are grim, the markets are in a free fall, and there's this familiar feeling of panic gripping the world. Global oil supply chains, the very arteries of our economy, are under a level of stress that we haven't seen in 50 years. That echo from 1973, well, suddenly, it's deafening.
To really get the initial shock, you have to absorb this number: 400%. In just a matter of months after that 73 embargo hit, the price of oil skyrocketed by that staggering amount. It was completely unprecedented, and it sent entire economies that have gotten so used to cheap energy into a total tailspin. It was a wake-up call of the most brutal kind.
And now, listen to the echo. The language is just eerily similar, right? We're hearing forecasts of a surge past that critical $100 mark, the exact same threat of economic whiplash that paralyzed the world in the 70s is back. And it forces you to ask, how on earth did we find ourselves standing at the edge of the very same cliff all these years later?
So let's really break these two moments down. You've got two completely distinct crises, separated by decades of incredible technological change and political shifts. And yet, they are bound together by a shared and critical vulnerability: our global addiction to oil.
Looking at this timeline, you just can't deny the parallels. It starts in October 1973, with the Yom Kippur War acting as the geopolitical flashpoint. Just 2 months later, by December, the damage is done. Prices have quadrupled. Now jump to 2026. A war in Iran boils over into a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, and the result? Exactly the same: immediate, severe turmoil in global markets. The pattern is tragically clear.
Every fire has to start with a spark, and for these massive oil shocks, the sparks weren't technical failures or some kind of natural disaster. No, they were geopolitical conflicts that just spilled over, transforming regional wars into a full-blown worldwide economic crisis.
The direct comparison here is pretty fascinating. In '73, the weapon was purely political. You had a coalition of nations, OPEC, using their control over oil supply as leverage. But in 2026, the crisis is geographic. It's a conflict focused on the Strait of Hormuz, this tiny waterway that a huge chunk of the world's oil has to pass through. So the supply is held hostage not by a political decision, but by a physical blockade. Two totally different methods, one devastating result.
So the key thing to understand here is the tool they used back in 1973. An embargo isn't just a trade spat. It's the intentional restriction of a critical resource to achieve a political goal. It was the moment the world learned that oil pumps and pipelines could be turned into powerful instruments of foreign policy.
And once that trigger is pulled, the economic damage just spreads. It's like a virus. Think about it. The price of energy is baked into absolutely everything, from the food you buy to the car you drive. When it spikes, that shockwave is felt in every single corner of the global economy.
This chart just shows you the sheer scale of that first shock. Before the crisis, oil was trading for about $3 a barrel. Then, within months, it shot up to $12. Can you imagine the cost of filling up your car or heating your home quadrupling in less than a season? That was the reality that hit people and businesses with brutal force.
Now, look at the modern equivalent. In 2026, prices for Brent and WTI crude, the two big global benchmarks, they surged past $90 a barrel. Now, the starting price is obviously way higher than in 1973, but the speed and the severity of the spike create the exact same panic, just vaporizing market confidence and threatening to plunge the world into a recession.
You know, the 1973 crisis actually gave us a new and very unwelcome word for our economic vocabulary: stagflation. And it was this toxic mix. You had prices rising like crazy, which meant your money was worth less, but at the exact same time, the economy wasn't growing, so jobs were disappearing. It was truly the worst of both worlds, and it haunted the global economy for years.
And this quote from 2026, it shows you that the ghost of stagflation is still out there. Experts like Helen Miller know that the first price surge is just the beginning.
The real fear is that far-reaching disruption, the domino effect on inflation, growth, and jobs, that could end up defining the economic landscape for years to come.
So what did this all actually feel like for real people? Well, in 1973, the fallout was almost cinematic. You had those endless lines at gas stations, a brutal recession. In 2026, the experience is maybe more digital, but it's no less painful. It's watching your retirement account vanish as the markets tank, or getting utility bills that cause real anxiety for millions of families. The pain is just as real.
You'd think a crisis of this magnitude would be a powerful teacher, right? The shock of 1973 was supposed to be this lesson written in stone, a permanent warning about the danger of our energy choices. The question is, did we actually learn it?
And that really is the central question of all this. After the pain, after the recession, after all the political turmoil of the 70s, did the world actually change course? Did we re-engineer our economies to be more resilient? Or do we just hit the snooze button and wait for the next alarm to go off?
I mean, the playbook written by the 73 crisis was crystal clear. It showed us the danger of relying on just one source of energy. It was screaming for us to diversify and build more resilient systems. It demanded we get serious about sustainable resource management. It laid bare just how fragile our supply chains were. So, did we follow the instructions? Well, let's look at the starting point. Back in 1973, right before the crisis, oil alone made up almost half of the entire global energy supply. And when you add in coal and natural gas, you see a world running almost entirely on a fossil fuel engine with very, very few backup systems. This is a snapshot of extreme vulnerability.
Okay, now fast forward 50 years. At first glance, you might see some progress. Oil's share dropped from 46% down to 31%. But look closer. That decrease wasn't really replaced by renewables. It was mostly just absorbed by more coal and more natural gas. The total dominance of fossil fuels is almost unchanged. Despite half a century of warnings, the fundamental structure of our energy diet, it looks alarmingly familiar.
And that brings us to our conclusion. See, the crisis of 2026 isn't a new story. It's really just the next chapter in a story that began way back in 1973. It's a recurring theme in our modern history, a weakness we've identified, but one we have completely failed to truly resolve.
This quote just perfectly captures the challenge we face. The past isn't just a collection of stories, it's a map. It's full of data, warnings, and case studies. It's a compass that could guide our policies, our investments, and our innovations, but only if we actually choose to use it. The lessons of 1973 are right there to guide us through the crisis of 2026. And so, we're left with this final, urgent question. Are these periodic energy shocks just an unavoidable part of our world, a cycle of crises that we're doomed to repeat forever? Or could this latest echo, this painful reminder of a lesson we should have learned a long, long time ago, finally be the catalyst that forces us to chart a truly new, more resilient and sustainable course? The answer is still being written.